Welcome, everybody. How's ever you made it? You braved the deluge coming down, the welcome to Portland rain. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Cheri Jamison. I am the current executive director here at Alberta Abbey, and we are a nonprofit performing arts venue. And while we are really aiming to nurture the arts here in Northeast Portland, I would say the core of our mission is about amplifying Black and underrepresented artists and communities. And that is sort of the lens that we have with all of the work that we do in all of our nonprofit programs. So I invite you, if you aren't familiar with us, to go to albertaabbey.org and check us out. We have a lot of great performances coming up. But one of the things that I love about this place is that it's not just about the music, it is about community. And so conversations like this, we do town halls, we do yoga, we have lots of events that really are here to bring people together. So with that, I would like to invite all of our panelists to come up on the stage and join me. So tonight, tonight is hosted by Music Portland. Is it officially Music Oregon now, or it's still Music Portland? Music Portland, all right. So we're still Music Portland, first Mondays. These are amazing networking events, and we usually have some kind of panel or professional development as part of it. And today we are talking about health and wellness in the music industry. I'm gonna take out some of my notes. But before we dive into that topic, I just want to give all of our panelists a chance to introduce themselves briefly. Go ahead.
I'm Kyleen King, she, her, and I'm a musician and a therapist who's interested in doing therapy for musicians.
I'm Melanie Bobbett. I work for the Jeremy Wilson Foundation, and I'm a social worker. And
my name is Hope Hampton. I am a local physical therapist. I own a practice that specializes in the rehab of musicians. And I'm a classical violinist and pianist, so that's my background and why I do what I do.
My name's Steve Drizos, and I am a musician. I'm 30 plus years of touring and recording. Been in Portland for a little over 20 years now, and I was asked to be a part of this panel to share some of my experience in sobriety and recovery.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here. And I want to give a shout out to Sean Flora, our tech director, helping us with sound, and Olivia in the bar, and Stephen on our camera and recording. Thank you all. So the premise of this conversation is all about the fact that we have some pretty unique mental and physical demands as musicians and people who work in the music industry. How the culture and financial stress can impact mental health and our physical health as well. And I think as kind of a context of this conversation, we just want to be real about the fact that the infrastructure of the music industry is not set up to care for artists' health and wellness, really. We are human artists trying to function in an inhumane environment, and we know the system is broken. So we are, and some of, brief example, we could talk all day about that and what isn't working, but, we know that there isn't health care available to many of us. The incentives of various business models vary and make it difficult and contribute to aiming to paying labor as little as possible. When we do try to join unions and take care of ourselves, that's sometimes frowned upon, might lose opportunities. And noticing over time that the industry has shifted the burden to individual artists, right? To handle our own marketing, handling our own management a lot of times. And then as, we struggle more and more and maybe don't experience the success or fame or rich, prosperity that we think we should be having, then we blame ourselves for that. And I know Kyleen and I were on a panel for this last year. Was it last year? On capitalism in the music industry. So I encourage those of you who might be interested in that to check out the recording on capitalism on the Music Portland YouTube. But the reality is that, musicians are facing employment precarity. There's not much of a social safety net. And so, and the environment is often where we're surrounded by drugs and alcohol, and social situations that may or may not be supportive to us individually. And now on top of all of that, we're faced with these technological revolutions like AI that are basically trying to create, take our jobs. And we know that doesn't really fill the same function, but it's challenging, and this is a broken system. It's a challenging time. So, deep breath. But we know that artists continue on, and we know that art and music is important. And it's more important than ever for us as artists to take care of ourselves and ask for help and find resources. So that's why we're here today. We want to share about how, so the first question really that I have for all of you is to share a brief, personal story. What led you to develop your personal passion and expertise for health and wellness for musicians and or yourself? Whoever wants to begin.
I'll go. First, I just want to say, since we're such a small group here, if you feel like coming up to the front and just kind of joining and being a little bit closer in, feel free. If that's morbidly uncomfortable for you to move from your comfortable spot, stay there. But it feels like it might feel a little more connected if everybody was to come in, since we're such a small group. But I will say, I think in my experience as a touring musician and somebody who, just always felt awkward and uncomfortable in this situation, I felt like very alone in that experience, and would try to talk to other musicians about it and would not, I feel like I was the drag or the bummer or something like that when I try to talk about the reality of I'm suffering here. And then the pandemic hit, and I had a moment to stop and think, and I kind of personally recognized I think I have the temperament of a therapist, and I think I should do that work. And so I started going back to school, and now I have a degree, and I'm actually a therapist now, and I'm recognizing the need of more people like me exists, which is basically all of us. We're all sensitive. And I want to create space for people to process their experience within the music business, and knowing what creatives typically struggle with. And having a therapist across from them that knows the business and knows the experience of being a musician and a creative in society, I'm interested in being present with them and just letting them talk about their experiences. So I guess that's it for me.
Thank you.
So as I mentioned, I'm a social worker, and I kind of found myself living in healthcare for my career, either working directly in a giant healthcare system, one of our big local hospital and clinic systems I worked at for 12 years, and kind of leading up to that, just in the periphery of healthcare. I worked for a nonprofit helping people apply for Social Security Disability and SSI. That was my first job with my fresh MSW. So just sort of naturally drawn to helping people navigate our unduly complicated healthcare system and the resources that one needs when they're dealing with a healthcare crisis or serious issue. So yeah, I had that going on when I, through my local music fandom, learned about the Jeremy Wilson Foundation by attending one of their annual fundraising concerts. And so when I realized that what they did was provide grants to local musicians toward living expenses or medical expenses when in a health crisis, I was like, hey, I wonder if they want a social worker to volunteer and help the people they're giving these grants to access all the other resources out in the world that could help their circumstances. And the answer was yes. And that was 10 years ago. And so over those years, I just worked with the founder and executive director, Jeremy Wilson, to build up this whole program that we have now, which is, as I said, to provide not only grants, but kind of navigate the healthcare system and all the related resources that are out there beyond just our grants. It just totally fits like my professional calling, but blends that really beautifully with my personal lifelong connection to music, and gives me a way to give back to the music that fuels me and supports me.
Beautiful. Thank you.
So I got into this work, I kind of started to feel my calling when I was in college, getting my music degree. I was having my own physical ailments and starting to wonder, like, who's gonna help me with this? Like, where do I go? Do I go to the doctor? Do I go to the chiropractor? Do I go to the acupuncturist? Do I do Alexander technique? Like, what is it? Where do I go? And I never really got answers to that. I grew up in Idaho, in Boise, Idaho. That's where I went to college. That's where I got my music degree at Boise State. We definitely didn't have those resources there. And so I was left with this sort of like lingering, like, well, who's gonna help me with this? And the answer was really no one. So I kind of just suffered with these like physical tendinopathies that I was experiencing and kind of just, lived with them, which is, I think, the story I hear over and over again on a daily basis from my patients is like, well, you just play through the pain, just like play through it. And it's like, okay, that feels not right. So after I finished my music degree, I actually moved to Portland and was trying to make it as a musician here, and it turned out that I didn't really have that like deep push to do that. And so I was kind of called into healthcare at that time. And originally I was going to be a speech pathologist that worked with vocalists. And then I was like, nah, that's just not the right fit for me. I don't know why, but it's not. And somehow kind of found my way into physical therapy just really serendipitously. And then, I worked for a PT clinic before I was a PT as an assistant or an aide. And I just was like, yes, this is it. And so right then it's like I knew I'm going for musicians. Like I knew that before I even started my graduate career. And so that's what I did. I had a vision, and so I went forth and carried out said vision, moved back to Portland after I finished my degree, and worked in general orthopedics for many years. Got a board certification in orthopedics, finished a residency in orthopedics. Just really wanted to hone my skill set so I could be the best that I could be for my people. And then 3 years ago, broke off and started my own practice where I specialize with almost 50% of my clients now are musicians, which is really awesome. I'd like to see more, but yeah, so that's what I do, and that's kind of my calling, and I feel really grateful for the work that I get to do, and it's super exciting to be able to help people in the way that I wasn't really able to be helped when I was going through it myself. So, yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
I'm certainly not an expert in the recovery field. I don't work in the recovery field. But I do have real life experience of being a musician and not having the option to not go out and tour to make money, and especially in early sobriety, the specific issues and challenges surrounding that, and sobriety and recovery is difficult for anybody on that journey. Addiction does not discriminate. But there are some pretty specific hurdles and issues that deal with working in a bar environment. And I'm talking about my experiences, quote unquote, like blue collar musicians. I was never in a band that was on a tour bus and had managers that could have a separate space for you to kind of be away. I was less than a month in treatment, and I had to go out, and I didn't have to, but if I wanted to make money, I had to go out and do a pretty long tour. And if I didn't do the tour, it affects the other people in the band, it affects management, so there's kind of a lot of pressure to do that. And the solution to your problem is often 10 feet away. And so I know what it's like, on the local level, in smaller venues like the Laurel Thirst or the Alberta Street Pub, or places where there isn't a place to kind of like get away from it and you're just sort of stuck in it. And it's very trying, and it's very difficult to get past that. And my experience of being a touring musician is, oftentimes, you can't afford to get hotel rooms, so you're staying at people's homes, and inherently there's a party that pops up. There's a lot of downtime, and I think musicians and creatives and any artists are sort of prone to anxiety and depression. I don't know if there's any scientific data to back that up.
Is.
But
Oh.
she's an expert in her field.
More about that.
So from my experience, what started as just a fun in my 20s, partying and living the rock and roll lifestyle, and then it just kind of becomes the coping mechanism after a while. You're like, shit, I don't really have a plan B here, and that's for me when the problems really start. So it's an industry that drugs and alcohol are they're accepted and often encouraged. And so I was speaking with Melanie a few weeks ago and throwing around some possible ideas to set up some programs to really help people locally in early sobriety to not feel so alone when they're out there and they have to work. So that's why I'm here.
Thank you. Wow. Yeah. Well, I know for myself, my mom is a marriage family therapist. My dad was a professional violinist at an orchestra and with the LA Opera for about 15 years. And even though I always kind of had a passion for mental health and well-being, it was when my dad was in his transitioning process and then following his death where I realized that he was part of the union, so he did have some support, but there was so much that he didn't take advantage of, and he didn't ask for support, and I didn't, and he didn't let me in. He didn't let many people in on his illness, and then which eventually led to his passing, and so it made me realize how important it is for us all to check in on each other, and that's another big reason why I'm very passionate about health and well-being. So thank you. And I'm sure everybody here has some kind of a story whether it's a trying one for yourself personally or where you've seen someone or maybe lost somebody. And so it's just really important that we're all part of this community together and can support one another. So the next question I have for everybody is really like, what are, and some of you touched on this already, but like, what are the biggest impacts on musicians' health and well-being that you see in your work? And are there any challenges that musicians face to receiving care for that? So biggest challenges and also access.
Yeah,
A lot.
there's not a lot of access. I think what I feel like is happening though is there's a lot of effort to improve access. At least maybe that's just what I'm seeing because that's what I'm doing now. But the conversation about mental health particularly is bigger and more well-known and less stigmatized now. And so I'm seeing more and more organizations crop up, even in the Grammys, if anybody watched the Grammys. I did not. But I know that Chapel Roan spoke about her difficulties as a trained musician. Chapel Roan and a few other musicians dumped a bunch of money into Backline, which is an organization that helps musicians with mental health. They got, I don't know how much, I won't speak to the number, but I think it's becoming just more well-known to the point that it's being spoken about on some of music's biggest stages. So I do feel like it's an upward trend, but
What is Backline?
Backline is a case management, like mental health case management organization that they also offer a lot of other services though, and I wish I had them memorized. I do not. I know that they have like a support group that is free, but case management meaning you can just fill out a form on their website and let them know what your issues are, and they can tailor resource support for you. So if you need mental health, professional mental health anywhere in the country, they can reach out to their network of people and connect you with that. And that is funded, so that case management is free. And the mutual aid support group is free. So really valuable service to have. But yeah, I feel like it's increasing, but that doesn't mean that everybody's aware of it, for one, and everybody can't just immediately access it. There's still a lot of barriers. I feel like there's just not enough money to go around for what the need actually is. So there's that. But I'd say the biggest challenges that I see, and maybe this is me speaking about my personal life and my friends, and that's probably what you've asked, but it's just financial instability, employment precarity, and overwork. I feel like those are giant. Trying to find work, enough work to actually pay your bills, trying to be able to pay your bills on a monthly basis when you have consistent bills and not consistent work, and overwork because likely you have to work other jobs if you're a musician. Not many people can make a full-time living. As a musician, very few of us can. So I feel like those are the main ones. And then I'm into mental health because, as Steve mentioned earlier, depression and anxiety and other mental disorders do run higher, and the research shows that in musician populations and creative arts. So I know there's a big mental health need, but I feel like it's less talked about. What I hear more of is like the money piece, work piece and the money piece, and what I feel like is also there is like there's a lot of suffering.
Do you think it's like something having to do with sort of the artistic personality, or is it really based out of kind of the career environment we're living in currently?
I think it's both. I think maybe we're expressors. I would guess, and I don't know if there's research on this, but there probably is in terms of like sensitivity and a certain type that is drawn to creativity that just might make you more susceptible. So there's that, but I think the social environment, I'm a social worker as well, the social environment that we're in also creates the context for some certain mental disorders. And so I think about capitalism, of course, as a return to our panel conversation, and how that intersects with being self-employed and alone, an independent contractor in this country, where there is no social safety net for you, that you're fighting to get your needs met all of the time. So that is going to have an impact on your mental health and well-being.
By nature of what I do at JWF, and everybody who comes to our organization for help is in the middle of a healthcare challenge of some degree. Within that, I continuously see just like the challenges related to stable access to healthcare. So there's always that, but what is also continuously striking is related to what Kyleen was discussing, which is the financial instability. And, what I can see is a baseline level of that, but how immediately and severely exacerbated that financial instability is by even the most minor health issue that might put somebody out for even a relatively short amount of time. It's so evident in virtually everybody who applies to our organization for assistance, just that like deep, immediate financial blow of just needing a little bit of time to deal with a health issue. There's not any clear way forward for dealing with that, but of course we think about programs like guaranteed basic income, which I know that there's been some work on putting together some kind of initiative for that in the state of Oregon. I don't know the current status of it. But just a guaranteed basic amount of income for everybody, so that when somebody such as a self-employed musician is put out of their regular stream of income, there's something there. And there's been recent news of a guaranteed income program specifically for, I can't remember if it's specifically for musicians or artists.
It's musicians.
In Ireland. Yes.
72 million euro in output costs and 80 million euro in return on investment.
Mm-hmm.
So a net of 8 million euro or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And so it was something that got implemented during the pandemic, and it was so popular they kept it, and now it's getting funded as like a permanent thing. It's only covering 2,000 people in Ireland, but they want to expand it to more people. So very, very popular and successful data to back it up, which is
We are
great.
keeping a close eye on that.
Didn't mean to cut you off. No. Yes. Yeah.
We need that. That's all I have to say.
As far as like impacts on my work, I really have to agree with these two women, which is that finances are like huge in my work. Musicians can't afford to take time off a lot of times, and a lot of times their injuries aren't just affecting their work as a musician, but they are working other jobs to make ends meet, and those injuries are exacerbated by those other jobs as well. So we get stuck in these loops of overuse that are chronic and really hard to get through, because it's not like you can say like, oh, just, take a couple weeks off, it'll get better. It's so much more complicated than that. And I feel like a lot of other professions, like I even compare professional athletes, like if an athlete gets injured, he just takes time off, his athletic trainers, his PTs are working on him. It's no big deal. He's making millions per year. Like, it's fine. But that same like level of care and attention to someone with equal skill is just not given to musicians. So the financial piece is huge. The stability piece is huge. And both of those things are things that we're just constantly contending with in the clientele that I work with. And we work inside of it instead of just say like, no, we're going to take rest. No, we're going to work through it and work with it, because that's the system that we have to work within. So, yeah.
I touched on some of the issues earlier. I think that there is, well, I was going to say that there is sort of a stigma around sobriety and recovery, but I don't know if that's true. I think a lot of the younger musicians that I have got to know, drinking and substance abuse isn't quite as much of their culture as it was when I was coming up in the 90s. It's certainly still there, but it doesn't seem to be quite as prevalent. So I don't know if the stigma is still quite there, but I think that there's just this fear of, when you get sober, that like you might lose your creative edge, or you're not going to have any friends anymore, or what are you going to do on the weekends, or how am I going to celebrate after a gig, or like how am I going to treat myself? And so for me, it was really like meeting and surrounding myself with other artists and musicians who showed me that like those are all just these illusions that are kind of in your head. And it's just about finding those people to really kind of dissolve those preconceived notions of what being a sober artist is like. And it's, as far as the financial part of it, the 12-step program that I am involved in is free of charge. And we live in a city where there's lots of those meetings all the time. And I find them on tour all the time. My personal experience was finding a bed in a detox center and going to intense outpatient program for many months. And that was really hard to find a bed, and it was really expensive. So for people, there's sort of under the umbrella of sobriety, there's people who are sort of sober curious. There's people who maybe just don't want to drink so much when they have a gig night. There's people who maybe are just heavy drinkers and they're trying to stop. And there's people like myself who, I am an alcoholic, and I tried many times on my own, and I had to go through all those avenues to get to where I am today. And I was very fortunate to have the resources to be able to do that. Even with good health insurance, it was still very expensive. And so, yeah, there's many free options, but for individuals who really need to go through, that avenue, whether it's alcohol or any other substances, it's hard to find space in treatment centers, and yeah, it's really expensive also.
Yeah. So now I want to open it up to our audience here and see what kind of questions, if you want to share a story briefly, going to the heart of what you want to say. We're at your disposal. We've got some amazing experts here, and whatever questions or thoughts that have been on your mind regarding health and wellness, we really want to hear about it. Sean.
Yeah, I'm gonna
All right.
It's going to take me a second to figure out what the question is exactly, but it seems like we've got sort of two main areas that we're talking about and thinking about here. We've got the personal, your own personal practices, my own personal practices and struggles, and then we've got the larger societal things, which end up sort of being political in nature. So we've talked about, the expense and the sort of abject disarray of healthcare in the United States. We've got, and then Melanie, you gave an example of, and Kyleen backed it up of another nation where they're doing something about it and they're seeing the positive results of that. I guess if I have a question, it's how do we, as a person, is your first prong to address it about yourself, or do we, like, how do we, where do you put your energy? You put your energy into the political to try to solve it, as a whole systemic thing, or you just try to, like, we're all just trying to survive, and I think that is how sometimes the system is self-perpetuating, because nobody has the not nobody, but lots of people don't have the bandwidth to address it. That was less of a question than maybe a jumping off point.
It was a good statement. I think as soon as you start to think about how do I fix the whole system, you shut down.
Yeah.
And that's, as you kind of alluded to, is the intention of anybody who's orchestrating something in terms of a society. But I would say, like, yeah, you start with you. Like, what do I need to survive? What's going on with me? Bringing some awareness of what your experience is. And I think when I think about this, I think about a lot of people don't have the language or the awareness of what the hell is going on with them. And this conversation might provide the language. If you haven't known it about yourself already, maybe somebody said it and you're like, oh shit, that's it. This is the thing that I think I could start with. Where's the starting point for you of, like, what's going on with you? There's a lot of stuff out of our control in terms of living in this society, in this country, in this time, and we're overwhelmed with information. But I think we're also seeing, in response, just a focusing in on smaller of community and, like, neighborhoods and organizations, and how can we take care of each other. And this keeps popping up, like what just happened with SNAP. All of these organizations, like what's the coffee house in town? Heretic, that raised like $86,000 or something, probably, who knows how much it is now, but they just put out a call of like, hey, we're feeding people for free, please donate, and they just got thousands and thousands of dollars to help feed people who are losing their SNAP benefits. So as soon as you start the conversation or put it out there, I feel like answers for you, or even just like understanding and awareness for you, can pop up, and that's where you start. But again, this is just the way I'm thinking about it. I'm curious about what anybody else would be thinking about that. I just know when I try to think in big picture of how do we fix the whole thing, I'm like, yeah, no. No, that's way too much for me in a lifetime. I am trying to just survive like everybody else. And so I focus in, and I look around me and within, and start there.
Yeah, and although I'm not a musician myself, like trying to make my way through all these messed up systems and everything, like I feel like I'm, similarly as Kyleen was saying, like looking outward to like what I can grab onto to try to bring information and resources to the music community that I'm part of through this work. And I mean, I feel like I'm really kind of living in a bubble of that right now to sort of try to cope with everything bigger on the national level that I just can't impact in any kind of way. But I mean, for example, I'm outside of the Jeremy Wilson Foundation, I'm very involved with Healthcare for All Oregon, which is a local nonprofit that's trying to bring universal health coverage to Oregon, and it's like a potential reality within a few years, depending on the political outcome of it. Just doing what I can to, sorry, lost my train of thought. But I mean, what I've also done with that is look at, what the Jeremy Wilson Foundation has done up until this point of time, which is help people who are in the middle of a health crisis. And I've taken what I've learned from my other healthcare oriented work and been like, what can we do at JWF to, take a proactive position in supporting musicians and industry workers' health and wellness. And that has manifested as a partnership that I was able to establish us with the Oregon Health Authority to be trained in doing OHP and marketplace enrollment myself, so I can provide that service directly to our music community, and couple that with support like establishing primary medical care or mental health care or dental care, like helping our community access care that way. And that has felt like a well-timed response to what's happening with potential Medicaid changes and the impact of federal legislation on the marketplace beginning next year. And I get direct updates from the state, for example, about what's happening with SNAP food assistance right now, so I will be able to, provide accurate information to our music community about navigating that system breakdown. Yeah, so I'm just taking what I can to give it back that way.
Yeah. So I think it's so great, so we know we have Jeremy Wilson Foundation and as a resource for us personally as musicians here in town. So I want to put it back out there again. Any other questions? What are your thoughts? How is this landing for you? Like, what is it bringing up for you?
I'm like trying to gather this question in my head. So I work in finance and actually part of the board of Music Oregon in Music Portland as a treasurer. My current role is a paraplanner for a private wealth practice, and my heart goes to musicians. I myself am a musician. And the theme that jumps out to me when it comes to therapy, which there's no shame in the therapy game, holy wow, that's huge, so awesome. And social work and physical therapy, because you turn the wrong way or load a piece of gear the wrong way, and that's one time I loaded a bass amp in my car and was like, that felt weird. And then the rest of the night I was like, wow, this is the first time I ever threw out my back. Holy crap, this is bad.
I hear that story all the time.
Oh, and I was dumb too. I was like, I should lift with my legs. I'm like, not this time. Terrible. So yeah. But the theme is starting where you're at, right? Meeting people where they're at and saying, here's where you are now. So beyond finance of earn more, that's like the easiest patch fix if there was one. But my question is, do you find when you're speaking with people about finance, is it more of the financial literacy of like, I just don't even know how this game works, or is it just like my question is, what are some things that come to the surface when you're speaking with folks about finance beyond like, I just need to earn more money, which I will say from my experience of doing financial plans, when people have more money, it doesn't necessarily fix their problems. They find a way to absorb it into something else. So with that context, I'm curious your input.
I'll just say in my work, it's more, the financial piece is more an issue of immediacy. Like, they don't have immediate access to financial resource, which affects their immediate well-being, like how they're going to get through this injury, how they're going to pay their rent next month, because now they're paying, to take time off, and they're losing that income, if you want to think of it that way, because some people, even though we try to not have them take off time, they have to. And so that's kind of how finance comes into my work, because I'm typically seeing people for anywhere between 8 and 12 weeks, and so we have this like window of time that we're dealing with this immediacy of how the financial system is going to affect access to healthcare, or how they cover their basic needs and things like that, and how we work within that. So that's how it is showing up in physical therapy, but I don't know about how it shows up for you guys.
I think there's a lot of neurodiversity also in the music industry. And so sometimes people just like literally maybe they cannot focus on that, or regardless of the amount of information they're given about finances, it's like difficult because it's a very organized left brain type thing. Or or there could be a lot of shame, if we get into like, oh, well, if you feel shame or you're feeling bad about how much you're earning or not earning, or how the decisions you've made in the past have impacted you now, etc. That can spiral, and the mental health part can spiral into just avoidance. It's a very normal, natural response, but it doesn't help the situation. So I think the more that we can create a safe environment around these conversations for all of this, like it's all interconnected.
I think the shame piece is a big one, particularly in this society, the pull yourself up by your own bootstraps, independent, do everything yourself, and if anything goes wrong, it's your fault kind of mentality will create a lot of shame that, for example, doing taxes when you're self-employed will stop you from wanting to do taxes. And then you'll just not pay your taxes or even deal with your taxes for years until somebody who is also a musician and does taxes, my sister, if anybody needs a recommendation, comes to rescue you of 10 years of back due or, taxes. But that's a big piece of it. I think I've heard a lot of different things. Like I've heard from some musicians, I need help with financial management because I don't know how to do that, like the left brain thing. There's musicians, if they're trying to make a full-time living, which interestingly in Portland, this is the way I think about Portland, is Portland has no money, but there's a small pool of money in the music industry and these venues that are independent, and like there's a scene that can still exist here. So there's still a lot of musicians that can make a living off of music. The amount of money they're making is small, but they can still do it. So like it's the fear of, can I make enough money this month on my gigs and my sessions and whatever I have to pay the bills, especially as bills are going up, rent and the cost of living is going up, and the fear of, what if I get injured and I cannot play gigs for 2 weeks or a month, then I can't pay my rent. And Jeremy Wilson will see a lot of that kind of stuff coming up. I also think of musicians, a lot of us, honestly, like if you're a musician, there are not many of us that are working full-time music. We're doing something else. So it just fluctuates. Like people that want to be able to do music but can't because they can't afford the time because the cost of living is going up, so they have to put more time into working their jobs and less time into music. And it's very complicated for sure. But if I'm thinking of just musicians, the cost or the income that you get as a musician in the studio, in the gig scene. I think I've talked to Bruce about this. Just something that you paid for a gig in 1980, and that amount you're paid for that gig is about the same in 2025. Like minimum wage hasn't gone up much either, and so you're thinking of what we expect to get paid at a gig is so little that it's a joke, honestly, for the amount of years and skill and time we're putting into some of this work. And this is in the research too, is the investment of education and practice and your instruments and upkeep versus the payment that's coming back to you is way out of whack. So there's that aspect too. For anybody that's a full-time musician, they will really know that difference.
I think, sometimes when it comes to health and well-being, maybe people don't really understand kind of the signs of when they're not doing well. And this is for the audience, this is for you guys, like, what are some sort of signs or triggers that people can keep an eye out for, either in themselves or others, just to say like, I need to check in, or I need to talk to somebody or ask for help. Like, for example, I didn't realize that one symptom of anxiety is like excessive sweating. And no, truly. And it wasn't until like someone mentioned that I was like, oh. And it made so many things like pop into place in my brain real fast. And then I was able to get both someone that I love and myself some extra help. And I never had heard of that even coming from the background that I do with someone in my family working in mental health, I'd never heard of that symptom.
Maybe another way to ask that question is, does anybody know, here's what my struggle is, and I'm really clear on it? Okay. I'll take that as a no. Or I'm uncomfortable with the question.
I think the most important thing is really taking the time to sit down with somebody that you may be concerned that they're struggling, and really be present and hear what they have to say. The one-on-one connection I think is super, super important. And yeah, it's really easy when you're struggling, whether you're on the road or you're home, to isolate and to not ask for help. And yeah, just to really check in on people. And it's one of those difficult things, because unless somebody really wants help, you can't force them. You can't force somebody to go see a therapist. You can't force somebody to go to rehab. But you can be there and be just be an ear. You don't even have to offer any sort of opinion or suggestion. You just have to give them some place to put that energy. And don't give up on them. I think that's a really important thing. It's like you never know when it's going to be their sort of breaking point, or when they're going to, just be like, I need help. I mean, that's what happened to me. I was hiding it for a long time, and then I just had a moment where I was like uncle, and I confided in a friend. It's like, I need help, and that changed my life. And that person didn't give up on me. Like every day called me. You're going to get help. You're going to get help. No, I'm fine. I was just having a moment. Like, no, I'm not leaving you. We're going to do this, and that made all the difference for me. So,
Yes, Frank.
Yes. Hello. I can't remember what podcast I was listening to, but it was somebody mentioned that that art is the nervous system for humanity. And I'm listening to all this, and I'm just thinking, like, what resources are out there for, like, practical encouragement? Like, where it's so important for us to express ourselves. It's essential. And I mean, there's plenty of open mics, there's plenty of things, the resources, but I think, like, talking to people and just having conversations and getting to know where they're coming from, because, I'm an artist myself, but I'm also, like, suppressing myself because it's fucking hard, like, do I really want to go out and do that? Like, and to what extent, and so having expertise, or, just a mental framework, like, and suggestions about, like, well, have you thought about this? You can do this. Does that seem, like, I don't know. I'm just thinking about, like, getting people to be vulnerable, but also in a safe and responsible way, and what resources are out there for that.
I love that question, and I have an answer. It's not the answer, but it's my thought, because I felt the exact same way. As musicians, I think we get really, well, maybe just as people, we feel like we're the only ones experiencing our difficulties, and we think we're the only ones that have those issues. And so in my undergrad, I've co-facilitated a musician support group for 4 weeks. That was the most I could make happen. And the people that showed up had exactly this experience where they talked about the realities of being musicians and what they were experiencing, what they were suffering. And the beautiful thing about a mutual aid group is if you just get a bunch of musicians together talking in a safe, vulnerable space, they're gonna come up with their own ideas for each other and feed off of each other and feel less alone. And so it's, I don't know when it's starting. It's definitely going to happen. I'll be facilitating a weekly musicians support group in Portland that will be both telehealth and in person, and just keep an ear out. I'll be promoting the hell out of it when it happens. But that space exactly. And I think just as a therapist, I'll use an example. Today I had a new student, and I haven't been teaching music, but I had a new vocal student who was actually looking for therapy, but also vocal lessons. And our first session today was a therapy session where we talked about the experience of their life, experience with music, former music instructors, expression, creativeness, wanting to experience joy. And that was the whole lesson, was just a therapy session. When you sit across from somebody and you listen to them, you learn a lot about yourself. If somebody's listening to you truly and they're just present with you, you're gonna learn so much about yourself. Because most of the time people aren't listening because we don't learn that skill. We don't learn how to listen to each other. We learn how to wait for our turn to talk about ourselves. So that's the beauty, I think, of being the therapist on the other side of musicians, where I know that world, and just letting that moment happen, being present with you and talking about this and getting real. There's so much that can be revealed there, and it's really, really beautiful when it happens. And so I'm excited for whatever the support group brings, and whatever therapy I get to do, and introducing other musicians to other therapists who are also musicians, because there's a lot more of us than I thought. I've been connecting with a lot of them. Reach out to me if you want to know who they are. There's a whole list on Music Portland's website that is a therapist directory, and we vetted them basically, and we said, we want to know your experience in the music industry. So every person that's on that list has experience in the music industry, and they're therapists. And there's all different kinds of specialties and their insurances, and everything is listed on there. So that's what I say.
I think it's the whole rub of that is musicians, artists in general, who are doing it professionally, even semi-professionally, is you're attaching your self-worth to your success. You know, if you don't make X amount of money, if you don't have so many streams on Spotify now or fans, it's really easy to look at yourself as a failure because it's hard to separate the art from the artist. I also run a recording studio, and I find it really interesting that the clients that I work with who have 9-to-5 jobs and have bands with their friends and are not invested in the outcome of what they're making, it's just strictly for the love of creating and making music, they're the happiest people that I work with. And I, for a long time, was always someone who's like, if you don't suffer for your art, you're not a real artist. You have to like get out there and eat shit in a van for years to be real. And my mindset has completely changed. And I came up in the 90s where people were still buying CDs. It was, you could scrape by a tour and it was affordable. That's all changed now. And so whenever I work with a younger artist who has these ambitions and dreams of like shopping it and getting on a label, it's like, I gotta be honest and be like, that paradigm is gone. I'm not saying that you should like quit the business, but you just have to be prepared to, just kind of reevaluate like your sources of income, and that it's okay to like have to get a job on the side if you have to. I think a lot of artists think that that's a sign of failure, that they weren't successful if they have to drive for Lyft or whatever they need to do to make ends meet. And it's like, no, if that's going to ultimately serve your art and make you happier, then do that. But it's a hard hurdle to get past as an artist.
Yeah, the grandiosity that is attached to that is
absurd. Yeah, but it's ruining a lot, you know. Yeah. Thank you.
Well, so a theme that I'm hearing is that, as musicians, it's easy to put your health and well-being at the bottom of the priority list. And unless, something happens and then you have to face it. And so I think really the part of the core of offering this is to say, like, your health and well-being is important. And if you need that reminder, here it is. Like, you matter, this is your, it's so core to our day-to-day experience, and we have so many people who care about, and I think it's good to know, like, as a musician, you have people in a community that care about you and have resources for you. So I know we're getting close to time, so I want to do one more lightning round to share, like, what is one resource that you wish every musician knew about?
I've got one. Because of what I've shared, of what I've seen with musicians and the, like, immediate, deep financial blow of any kind of health issue, the number one resource, there are so many, but because of that pervasive problem, the one resource that comes to mind that I hope every musician can learn about is Paid Leave Oregon. It's a state program that I think opened up no more than a couple years ago. But it is available to self-employed people. You have to pay into it. And I can't rattle off like what the percentage of your income that you have to pay toward it or something, but I was surprised about how relatively low the pay-in is in order to get 12 weeks of paid leave if you or a close family member is experiencing a health issue that you need to take care of. You have to file your taxes in order to access it. But it seems pretty helpful. I'm looking into it myself right now because I'm a self-employed contractor, and I'm like, oh yeah, I should go for that too. So Paid Leave Oregon. Kyleen and I put together a nice little list of resources. Paid Leave Oregon is on there, a few others, and a few that I thought of at this particular moment with what's going on with SNAP and health coverage issues. So be sure to pick up one of those before you leave.
I'd say Paid Leave Oregon is awesome. I do it as a self-employed person. Very good, not expensive. Yeah. I think I pay like $42 a month. But I would say, since we all already know about Jeremy Wilson Foundation, if you don't know about Music Cares, look them up. They're great. They offer all sorts of events that get musicians access to free resources like dental care. I participate with them. I do twice a year. I do a clinic in October and April, where if you sign up for this event, you get to come see me for free for an evaluation and a follow-up visit. So they promote on their Instagram page. I promote on my Instagram page when I'm on social media. So check them out. It's like kind of like Jeremy Wilson, but on a little bit grander scale.
Yeah, we at JWF, we work with people all the time who are getting grants from Music Cares simultaneous with ours. We are a very small, low resources organization, so we have a limit of how much we can give somebody in a grant, and when we see that their need surpasses what we can help with, we're referring people to Music Cares for more help, and their grants are bigger, so yeah, they're awesome.
I can't really speak for any specific organization, but what came to mind is community. really leaning on your community, because we are really the only ones that are going to help each other out. And one of the beautiful things about Portland is that besides Jeremy Wilson Foundation and all these other wonderful organizations, I've seen so many times somebody needs help, and a few pop-up shows at a small venue that musicians will put together on their own, even if it's just putting, a little Band-Aid on a bigger wound. It's community coming together, and if you are really struggling, like, lean on your community, because they will step up.
I love that you spoke to that, because when I said earlier that Portland has no money, I also say that's why it's so great, because the community is so strong here. When you have so little money, there's less competition, and everybody just loves each other.
And it's also one of those things that the broke-ass musicians will give you the last 2 dimes in their pocket to help you out.
And that's exactly what happens.
They understand.
You just spoke to that, because anytime somebody's suffering in this music community, everybody comes together and helps them. There's GoFundMes, there's concerts, there's tributes, there's such beautiful community in this city, and I've never lived in a city like this one that has a music community like this one does. And I'm fighting to preserve it at all costs, whatever we can do. But yeah, great resource, and I would just add, please check out the Music Portland mental health resource list. There's a therapist directory, all kinds of organizations, all the ones we're speaking about. There's podcasts, there's books, there's everything that we could cobble together is on there. And check out Backline. Backline is also great. If you're looking for immediate mutual aid support group before I create one, that one's right there and happening every week. I think it's every week. Maybe it's every other week, but yeah, check it out.
Every week. I want to second that Backline to Care. Their weekly support group is not just for musicians. It's available to anyone who works in the music industry, including agents, managers, family members, friends, anyone who is part of the music industry universe, and it's very welcoming and safe. And so I just thank everybody for being here. Bruce, yes, you want to share?
Just one of the other big ones is what used to be called the Actors Fund, but is the Entertainment Community Fund.
Entertainment Community Fund.
Now, and it's probably because of the old name, people didn't think it was available for musicians, but it is.
Yes, it is.
Anyone else? Anybody else have some good resources? Yeah.
I work at the Peer Company, which is a peer-run organization that serves a lot of the community that struggles with mental health and substance use disorder. And we're also, in my particular program, it's the Behavioral Health Resource Network. So we have access to lots of resources that are available specifically in my program for people that have substance use disorder as part of their story. But there's other programs within my company that serves people with mental health as part of their story. And we offer services that are one-on-one listening, connecting, and helping people navigate the systems and all of that other stuff. So I think I want to connect our organization to the Jeremy Wilson Foundation and have that. I think a lot of this is about connecting already existing organizations and having that conversation, like this person can connect to this person and can connect to this person, and that's how people can communicate and cooperate. So I just wanted to
Awesome.
put that
Thank
out there.
you. Anyone else? Okay. Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you for joining us tonight and braving the weather. I think this is a really exciting conversation, healthy conversation. And of course, if anybody has more thoughts, more questions, feel free to come to us afterwards. So thanks again, and have a wonderful rest of your evening.